we as a culture feel like we have to overexceed, work harder, show up early, stay late, unfortunate expectation to be placed on us. And again, like that's what I'm trying to, with my child, instill that you are Black, be proud. I'll never forget my boss. There was me and another Black girl that worked there. And the job was based highly on appearance. I was in the serving industry, and they wanted, the girl came in for work for her shift, and they said, Shiaian, go fix her. What? I am so uncomfortable. Like, how am I going to go tell this Black girl that I have to fix her? Like, what's wrong with her?
Wow.
You know what I mean? They're like, we just need her hair to be a little bit different, and we need her to have a bit more makeup on.
Wow.
I know, crazy. I worked at Hooters. It's my first job. I was a Hooters girl. Very small town, very like beer and just inappropriate things for an 18-year-old. And so, yeah, they had me go in there, and I took her in the back room and I said, they're telling me to fix you.
That's intense.
It was so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what that means. I was like, so I'm just going to come back here and we're just going to sit and talk. I'm not going to change anything because like you're fine just the way you are, you know. And like they had said similar things to me, like in my interview, like we expect your hair to be straight and slicked back. You know, we expect you to like wear lipstick. And I was like, this is insane.
Right.
That is crazy talk for a serving job. I'm literally serving chicken wings. You know what I mean? Like I'm not like at some Michelin star restaurant. And even then it shouldn't be okay. But like, I feel like they're, you know, once you move up in the chain, there's a standard, you know what I mean? Like you want to look elegant, you know what I mean? You want to look put together. I understand that. Like I respect people and love people's drive to like, not really go above and beyond, but to take pride in themselves.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, I'm not saying I'm not the girl who like never goes to store without makeup because that's not the case. But like there are some people like that. And I'm like, that might be a little excessive. But like, you know, if you're going to a corporate event, like play the corporate role.
Right.
And I also let her play dress up. But to make an employee, a Black employee, feel like you have to then go and tell another Black employee to fix her. Like, I was like, I think her hair looks great. It was just an afro.
Right.
You know, it was an afro.
I think the hair is a very important thing. And like you just said, taking pride in something.
Yes.
When you have a personal struggle, whatever that may be,
right,
being able to take pride in something through that struggle is very important. It's
very powerful. It's very admirable. You know what I mean? To be the natural girl who is a little bit more modest in a world who exposes women and like, you know, makes you think that this is the idea of beauty. You know what I mean? Like on the face of like almost every makeup campaign, you know what I mean? Like, and I love that the media now is pushing it a little bit differently, but it's still not enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like still majority models are very small, very typical, like, you know, same shape, same body. And it's like, maybe that's just that industry, right? So it's kind of like when you have that cousin at Thanksgiving who like no one really likes, but everybody just tolerates, you know what I mean? Because that's just who they are and you got to accept them, which I don't believe in. I'm like, that's who you are. Okay. I don't have to put myself in that environment.
Right.
Right. I don't have to.
Yeah.
And so, that with the beauty industry, you know what I mean? Like it's very hard to, especially for like young girls, you know what I mean? To like want to see an image that's represented that is familiar. And when it's not familiar, then they go and try to change themselves to make it like that is okay. And it's like, you're fine just how you are. You know, like if you want to enhance or whatever, you know, if your hair is brown and you want it red, like, okay, you know what I mean? That's not because you're like seeing a bunch of redheads in the media. You know what I mean? Like, but when you see like all these extensions and all these straighteners and all these relaxers and all these products that don't really fit well with you, you know what I mean? I mean, it was just, again, like it wasn't too long ago to where like they finally started coming out with shades that were like meant for foundation for Black women. You know what I mean? Like it was very hard as a Black woman to find a shade that fit you. You know what I mean? And I think that that does a lot to people's image.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, and
going to the store and not being able to find things.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible.
When everybody else can.
Yeah, and like, you know, and it goes back farther than that. You know what I mean? Like it's obviously can get way deeper into that, into like, you know, the slavery and the racism and things like that. But as far as like my personal experience, like because I was young and what was labeled as like pretty, you know what I mean? Like the image was really hard to relate to. Like it was very like damaging as far as like, you know, being looked at as a Black woman, you know what I mean? And people not really understanding, you know what I mean? Like you're loud, you are boisterous, you are extremely talented, you know? And then like when you're a talented Black woman, that's like even worse, you know what I mean? Because now I feel like people just either try to minimize your work or your art, or they don't take it serious, or the person who's sitting beside you is white and may not be as good as you, but because of their background or their parents or where they grew up, like, you know, they're more of a shoo-in than you are. And a lot of Black talent gets swept under the rug that way, you know? And that's tough to watch. You know, I see all these books and it's like all these white poets and authors, and I'm just like, man, if this book is like really good and like never won as like bestseller or New York Times recognition or anything like that. And it's like, that's unfortunate. And that's, you know, predominantly because it's easier to push white into the media because there are predominantly white people in this world that is predominantly accepted. And that is discouraging.
They're also a larger target audience.
100%. So like just on, again, like with social media. Exactly. So it's like they want to push something even though it's not really that good, you know? And then you have someone who poured their heart and soul onto those pages and talk about things that are real, like their ridicule or their racism as growing up as a Black woman or a Black man, or, you know, like some people are like brutally beaten because of that. And it's like, you know, when you arrest someone who's white, you're not as aggressive. You're not as scared.
Right.
You know, and so fear is what's driving them to therefore become aggressive. And then we're getting the tail end of that. You know, like it's not okay. Like police brutality is very real. Profiling is very real. You know what I mean? Like, I bet you feel dumb when you pull over that person going 90 and a 40 in a Mercedes, tinted windows, and the road on the window and they're white.
Right.
But you feel really stupid because you wouldn't have pulled them over if you would have known that they were white. I mean, you assumed that they were Black. Just like you see when someone like is wearing baggy clothes or anything like that. Like, and that's a trend now. Baggy clothes with like female and men. You know what I mean? But like when Black people were doing that, it was a cause for concern. It was tasteless. You know what I mean? It was inappropriate. You know, the baggy jeans, you know what I mean? Like the shirts that are 3 sizes too big. You know what I mean? Like you're not formal enough. You're not put together enough. But now all the kids are wearing white Air Forces, you know, and that's not really talked about enough. For one, again, culture appropriation, you know what I mean? Like they, like with the shoes, you know what I mean? Like that was something like very big in the Black culture, Nike and like all that, like very big in the Black culture. And then it was like monetized and like taken over and like marketed to like all the white people. So it's now like, we don't even have that. You know what I mean? Like there's sometimes we do want something that's just ours. You know what I mean? Just like white people take things and make it just about them. You know what I mean? But like when we try to do it now, it's like, oh, like, why are you doing that? It's like, because this is where we feel safe.
I don't think white people actually understand that these things are just for them.
No, I don't understand why they can't think that. You know what I mean? Like, if you host an event and it's marketed towards predominantly white people, and that's just what it is. Like, obviously, you know, you're not going to have black people come in there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's what you have in your shop. So it's like, okay, like now a black woman set up shop. You know what I mean? She's selling all this herbal stuff. She's doing like her natural thing, whatever. Like, okay, cool. Like, she's trying to introduce this type of holistic healing into the Black community, right? So we naturally want to keep it amongst ourselves. And then, you know, like now the white people have to come in and like now it's like all over Instagram and like your marketing, and it's like now it's lost its whole purpose. You know what I mean? Like its purpose was for Black women, you know, like they being in the medical field, you know what I mean? Like Black patients are treated very differently they are, especially women in labor specifically. Really? Yes. It's like as if they don't work hard enough. You know what I mean? Like a lot of Black women suffer during labor. Like I was like just literally like on a wild goose chase one day, and I was just searching through, and I don't remember the statistics exactly, but like there was a significant amount of people who, women specifically, who had like died or experienced complications in childbirth in comparison to white women. And like it's like leading back to like the care they received like during labor. And I'm just like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like my friend was just telling me the other day that the movie Wicked that came out, it's a Disney movie. It's totally a girly movie. So Wicked came out and Ariana Grande's in it. Okay. And then there's a Black actress as well. They're both lead roles. Mm. The amount of increase in pay that Ariana Grande got over the Black actress was sickening. Really? I don't remember the number, but it was like 40 something, like a significant amount of difference that you're playing a white, or I don't really know if Ariana's white, but in the culture she's perceived as white. Mm-hmm. Her pay versus the Black woman. And then again, that goes back to people that are currently experiencing that now in the office, you know what I mean? Like, or in the work field, you know what I mean? Like I was thinking the other day, like I was overhearing like some people talking at work, and like, yeah, this girl who literally is like fresh out of college is like making a couple dollars less than I am. So then I'm doing some research. I'm like asking other people, and I'm like, man, these people have less experience than me. Right. And they're making more than me. And I can't help but equate that to what it is. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm just like, okay, well, that's cool. Right. I guess. So I guess I'll be asking for a raise. I guess. But it's like, that is very prominent and goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about how we as a culture feel like we have to overachieve, overexceed, work harder, show up early, stay late, work through our lunch. You know what I mean? Where it's like, that's a really unfortunate expectation to be placed on us. And again, like, that's what I'm trying to, like, with my child, instill that, like, you are Black, be proud. But, like, I wrote in a poem the other day, like, as a Black man, never put your feelings on mute. You know what I mean? Like, even if you feel like someone's not going to understand, or even if it is perceived as aggressive, like, if someone is treating you poorly, you speak up. Mm-hmm. You do not let that slide. I'm not saying you have to go off and punch him in the eye, unless. But I'm like, you know, like, just make sure that you speak up for yourself. Right. Don't feel like because you're Black that you have to silence yourself, that you have to mute yourself or dwindle yourself down to make it easier for someone else to chew. Right. Like, I don't want you to do that.
It's censored.
Yeah. We don't want that in this household.
You mentioned some stuff regarding spaces.
Yes.
When it comes to spaces, what's often heard in the media is safe spaces.
Yeah.
That's what's usually touted to the population. I think a lot of individuals in the white community perceive safe spaces as either irrelevant.
Right.
If anything, they will turn it around as it's reverse racism.
Yeah.
Different things like that. It's a boundary.
Yeah.
You've kind of mentioned boundary with different things, like language. Yep. Cis, for example.
Yes, please do not call me cis.
I'm not.
Not you. Not you.
Okay.
No.
We're good.
I'm like, that one. Yeah, no, we're
good. Awesome. Okay. So those boundaries that are in public.
Yes.
You know, those boundaries with how people interact with you. Why are those important?
I think that it allows people to understand where they kind of stand. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, if we host a BIPOC open mic, an all Black mic, however you want to phrase it, mm-hmm. I think that it should be respected by the white community, like maybe not oversaturated. You know, clearly we're trying to, this is a boundary where we feel safe, to where, you know, somebody might not feel comfortable about talking about their experience if the predator is in the audience right now. Not saying that you directly, but it could have been your granddaddy. And that may not be your fault, but it's still the way that it is. And so I try to encourage the respect of those spaces. You know what I mean? So it's like, if we are here and we're doing this, okay. But it's kind of like nicely saying, you don't have a place here.
Right.
And that's okay. Because for so long, we didn't have a place either. And so now that we've created that place, we would like to keep that sacred. So,
I think that's important.
Yeah, I think it's very important.
I think so many people just see it as race, but how you're talking about it, like the granddaddy comment.
Right.
Right. If we experience something, in race or with another condition, having that in the environment will change the way that we behave.
Yes.
And how we interact with others.
Yes. And it really just boils down to, if you know something is wrong, then stop reteaching it. You know, like, stop doing the same thing that your father did. Stop saying the same thing that your father did. And then you won't grow up to be a racist white man. You know, like, if you know that it's wrong, because I think that's what's even worse is when people like know that it's wrong and they just like sit there and don't do anything about it. Like, even if you can't change the whole scale of the world, like, you could maybe make a difference within your family. And then your family can then make a difference to someone else, you know? And I just don't see that happens a lot. You know, you see all these like Black Lives Matter sign, and it's like, well, when you see a Black person on the street, you don't say, hi, how are you doing?
Right. Do you actually believe it?
No, you're just doing that so we don't break into your house.
Never heard of it that way.
I'm like, that's the way I view it. And so, and yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's real. Seems like it's all propaganda.
Right.
You know? And I'd rather someone just be who they are. Like, if you hate me, then hate me, and hate me loudly. Don't go and like act like you support me, and then you're in the break room talking about the Black girl in the office.
Right.
Like, you should just not try to be my friend. And then I can at least respect you for being like true to yourself, but not when you behave the other way. Like, that's probably like, in my opinion, worse, is like when you are like acting like you're helpful or acting like you understand or that you can like support how I feel. And then like the minute that I'm no longer in the room in front of you, the story is completely different. Right. And you're just like one of them. Well, I don't like snakes in my garden. So I would have rather you just kept it real from the jump.
Right.
You know?
It makes sense to me. And on that note of that spaces, going back to gentrification, will you explain that to people who may not know?
In my world, because again, I don't really explain things like literally. So the way that my brain processes it is that it's when you have a Black neighborhood and then all of these white corporations come in, they put up like different housing, they buy up the housing. They are now pushing our ancestors and our grandmothers and everyone out. And so now what was a Black community is now popped up with several white people. Now the prices on our houses are going up. Now our businesses are going out of stock. Now you're buying up all of our businesses. And it's like, instead of buying it up, why don't you invest in the mom and pop? You know, why don't you help? You know, like that's what you phrase it as. We're trying to help this community.
Yep.
Yeah. That's, well, you're not fucking helping by taking out my grandma's fish frying place and putting up some cookie pastry shop.
Right.
You know, like, why don't you invest in what's there and then allow it to stay in the community and then grow. And then as that grows, you also grow, you know, as like the person who's investing. But instead you don't, you buy up, you push out because you do have more money where, you know, unfortunately behind or whatever the case may be, because times are hard. And now we have all these white people. So obviously now the fish isn't selling because no one wants fried fish and a predominantly white community. And so it's just, yeah, where I feel like white people come in and bulldoze her over and kick us all out. and then try to stage it as like they're helping.
Right.
But you're not helping. You're making it worse. Now we have nowhere to go. You know, when like you didn't have to do that. We were doing fine over here. And that's just the way I see it. They see it as like a hip happening spot, like Alberta specifically. Like it is packed with so many like little white boutiques and like apartment complexes and like all these restaurants, which yes, might be tasty. But still, you know what I'm saying? Like you're taking out like history here.
Yeah, it's demeaning too. It's saying you're better off. We're making it better.
Yeah. Well, who said it was worse? We're chilling over here. You know what I mean? Like that area in general, like North Portland, was like where all the Black people were. You know, and now like that's something you hear all the time, like always like gentrified. And it's like that sucks. You know, like just sucks really bad.
We've talked about a lot. I think that camera's going to die.
I have no idea where I was supposed to be looking at this whole time.
Right here, wherever you want.
Okay.
So we've talked a lot about the little things. How do those... We've talked a lot about kind of like indirect racism that people aren't aware of.
Yeah.
But what about like the direct racism? Having that happen over and over again.
Yeah.
It's traumatic. Like we've talked about with the identity.
Yep.
How has that shaped your behavior in interacting with other people in your personal relationships? Like you said, in your friend circle, having white people.
Yeah, I would say that sometimes it's hard to feel understood. You know what I mean? Like when you have certain beliefs, or if they go and try to say like, oh, well, like not every white person is like that. Well, no, they're not. But like at the same time, you have to see why this is still a problem. You still have to like, especially like if you're going to be friends with someone of color, like you definitely, obviously have to support it.
Right.
Of protecting them and making sure they're good. You know what I mean? And so I think that sometimes in my past, it has caused me to just kind of hush myself up a little bit. You know, like if I'm at the family gathering with my white friends and, you know, like it's like 4th of July barbecue, like 4th of July barbecues at the white friend's house is very different than the ones at the white friend's house. And so you kind of have to act accordingly. You know what I mean? If you don't really want to deal with the shit that comes behind it, you know what I mean? And then I had just gotten to a point to where I didn't really care about explaining myself anymore. Like if you're going to ask, I'm going to tell, you know? And I just stopped masking. I stopped changing. I stopped trying to fit in or accommodate. I was just simply myself. And if that's too Black for you, then fuck right off.
Right.
Is how I view it.
I don't think people know necessarily about that. They see an individual who's Black or of whatever race and assume this is who they are. Right.
Yeah, it's not all the time. You know what I mean? Like if you walk into a corporation, you know what I mean? Like you tend to sit up a little bit straighter, you know, because you don't want to be perceived as what we've always been perceived as, someone who is untrustworthy, doesn't have as good as work ethic, you know, like just not good enough label wise, you know, like there was a time where Black families were naming their children very white names. And the reason was because when they go to apply for that job, when they look at that resume and they don't have you in front of you, they don't assume that you're Black. They don't assume that you're untalented. They don't assume that you're unworthy of the position. And that's terrible for people to have to feel like they have to name their child Brandon or something for them to be able to get a job when they're 20. Right. That's awful.
Packaging.
Yeah. Like molding, basically, you know, into, and I don't even think they did it on, like, it wasn't like they were doing it to hurt the child. You know what I mean? It's more so like, again, like that generational trauma of like, oh, like I was looked at this way because of my name and how I was raised in the area that I lived in. So they want to give their children the best thing they can.
Mm-hmm.
So they move them to a white school. They put them in a private school. They give them a very white name. They then therefore just set them up to where like they don't have to deal with the racism and the prejudice to such a high degree, but not realizing that putting your child into environments where they stick out like a sore thumb are also not very good.
Right.
You know, like it can hurt just as much as it can heal.
Yeah,
you know,
forcing social conformity.
Yeah, because we just want to be who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and that's just my personal experience of, you know, being a Black girl raised by a white family.
So, what is one thing for all the white people out there that you wish that they understood about Black experience?
Hello, I'm dedicated to delivering the best product possible, and your support helps make it happen. Here's how you can help. Become a patron on Patreon. Your contributions help cover essential costs like audio and video production software, streaming services, guest travel expenses, and even electricity to keep everything running. You can support via GoFundMe if you'd like to directly support upgrades. I've created a GoFundMe campaign. For example, contributions can help fund the purchase of 2 Sony Alpha EV1 cameras and lenses or better angles, including full face shots of my guests and myself. You can visit my website to speakonline.com and share articles and content. Also, if you're interested in becoming a contributor or collaborating, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out and let's explore how you can get involved. You can engage with the channel. Liking, sharing, subscribing, and leaving a comment all go a long way in helping this channel grow and reach more people. Your support means everything, and I'm excited to keep improving and bring you the best possible product. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.